In today's video, we're talking refeeds, diet breaks. Welcome to the video, guys. My name is Tyler, also known as the Fit Chemist, and I help people take control of their lives by taking control of their fitness and nutrition habits. So if you're new here, welcome. Consider hitting that subscribe button and turning those notification bells on. But if you're returning, welcome. Today we're going to be continuing with part 7 of the How to Diet series. So we are nearing the end, guys. There's a couple more episodes, so bear with me. But I just want to congratulate you. If you've made it this far, you are on your way to one of the most successful diets that you've ever done. Back when I was in college, I was all about the cheat meal. I was caught up in the bro science life, and everyone was telling me that on Sunday night I could just go out, eat whatever I want, no limits. It's going to reset your metabolism. I would seriously go out. I'll put up a photo. I would go out and get Five Guys, donuts, Chipotle, like anything I was craving during the week, I would get it and eat as much as I possibly could, and I thought that there were going to be no detrimental effects. I was wrong. If you do this sort of thing and you don't track calories, you can end up consuming more calories than you intended, which can ruin your deficit from the previous week or the upcoming week. You might end up gaining weight, which is not the goal of the diet, right? We don't want to spend more time in the diet because one Sunday we decide to go out and pig out and eat all the stuff that we've been craving. I do want to say there's some merit to a cheat meal. So the idea behind it is that you essentially have two hormones. One is leptin, which is your satiety hormone, and then one is ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone. So an easy way to remember that is that hunger has a G in it and ghrelin starts with G. So the idea of a cheat meal would be to raise leptin levels and decrease ghrelin levels, so that way during the upcoming week you're not as hungry and you can better adhere to your calorie deficit. But again, there's too much variability in a cheat meal because you can eat so many calories without even tracking it, and it just really could derail your progress. So in today's video, what I want to cover is 2 alternatives to a cheat meal. So I wouldn't call these cheat meals by any means, but they're basically alternatives to that will sort of get some of those same positive effects that a cheat meal is trying to go after, but without completely derailing your diet. So there are 2 ways to do this. The first one is a refeed. A refeed is basically just a day or 2 at maintenance. So you can have 6 days in a deficit followed by 1 day at maintenance, or you could have 5 days in a deficit followed by 2 days at maintenance. I want to point out one study by Dr. Bill Campbell, which they took 27 individuals, both males and females, and they split them into 2 groups. So one was a continuous calorie deficit for 7 weeks, so all 7 days of the week they were in a deficit. And then there was another group called the refeed group that they also dieted for 7 weeks, but within those weeks they had 5 calorie deficit days and then 2 refeed days on the weekends, which higher carb levels. So the individuals in this study had about 5 years of training experience, and throughout the diet they were training 4 days per week, and they also set protein intake at 0.8 grams per pound, which, if you remember from the previous videos, that is exactly where we want to be when we're dieting. Now what they found in the results of this study was that both groups ended up losing significant amounts of fat mass and body mass, but there was no difference between the 2 groups. So being in a refeed group does not inhibit your ability to lose fat. But what they found was that the group that was actually having these refeeds, they were able to retain more of their fat-free body mass, so that includes muscle, but they're also able to retain some of their resting metabolic rate, or their RMR. So their metabolism actually was not slowing as fast as the group that had a continuous calorie deficit. Their conclusion, they say, our findings suggest that in lean individuals, the inclusion of resistance training, high protein intakes, a slow rate of weight loss, and a periodic carbohydrate refeeding may prevent some of the adverse responses to prolonged energy resistance. I would say the one drawback of this study is that they only dieted for 7 weeks, and most diets are typically much longer than that. I would say 7 weeks is almost like a mini cut, but I still think this paper gives credence to the idea of using refeeds in your diet. So if you're interested, I'll link it down below. You can go click on the study, see how they did it, and if you want to replicate it in your own diet, go for it. But what I personally prefer is this second option, and that's what's called a diet break. Diet breaks are basically an entire week of refeeds. So rather than having 5 days in a deficit and 2 days at maintenance, every single day is going to be at maintenance. So in a second, we'll talk about why you should do a diet break, how to do a diet break and when you should do a diet break. But first, I just want to point out what a diet break is not. A diet break is not a cheat meal. It's not a refeed. It's not, no more tracking. We're just going to eat whatever the heck we want. This is still a controlled manner. We're tracking while we're eating. The only difference is that rather than being in a calorie deficit, we're going to be at maintenance for a week or maybe even 2 weeks. So I want to put up 2 graphs that sort of show the difference between a diet with no diet breaks and a diet with diet breaks. So if we're not doing any diet breaks at all, the goal would be fat loss the whole time. So that represents something more like a linear trend. Keep in mind, it's not going to look like that because we talked about in a previous video how your weight's going to fluctuate every day. But I think it sort of draws an analogy where if we look at the other graph, you can see the goal is fat loss for some periods, but then there's some periods, a straight line of maintenance, and then you go back into fat loss and then maintenance. So there's a difference between them. Why should you diet break? Well, the main reason is to delay some of those negative effects from metabolic adaptation. So as you start to diet and you get leaner and leaner, you might have less energy, your strength might start to decrease. If you're a male, testosterone will start to drop a little bit. If you're male and female, you'll have increased ghrelin levels. So remember, that is the hunger hormone. So by implementing diet breaks, you're basically just trying to avoid those or at least delay the onset of those negative effects. So I want to look at this MATADOR study, which actually points out that there may be even more benefits to taking some of these diet breaks. So let's bring that up and take a look. So this study took 51 obese men and split them into 2 groups of 26 and 25. One group was a continuous deficit for 16 weeks, and they would eat at 67% of their maintenance calories. And then the diet break group, they were also in a deficit for 16 weeks, but instead of dieting for 16 weeks straight, what they did was they would do 2 weeks in a deficit followed by 2 weeks of a diet break. They started the study by taking everyone's baseline measurements for 4 weeks, so they wanted to get an accurate measurement on their total daily energy expenditure, or their TDEE, and then they allowed the diet to go on. And what they found was the group that had diet breaks actually lost 50% more fat. They maintained the same amount of muscle mass, and their metabolism slowed 50% less than the other group. That is huge. What they stated in their conclusion was the greater weight and fat loss was achieved with intermittent ER or energy restriction, and by interrupting energy restriction with energy balance rest periods that may actually reduce the compensatory metabolic responses and in turn improve weight loss efficiency. There are some drawbacks to this study as well. So the first one being that it's 50 obese men. So I am a physique athlete and my body is not necessarily representative of that, but I still think there are benefits from doing this because I've implemented it in my own diets and I have seen success with it. Another drawback is that they're eating 67% of their maintenance, which is a pretty aggressive deficit. So if your maintenance was 3,000 calories, you'd be eating 2,000 calories a day, which a 1,000 calorie deficit is very large. If I had to guess, if we went through and calculated the rate of weight loss, it would be outside of the recommended range. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. And the last one is that the group that had to take diet breaks, of course, they had to diet twice as long because every 2 weeks they would have a diet break. How to do a diet break? What you first need to do is calculate your maintenance calories. So remember, our maintenance after a fat loss period is not the same as our maintenance before we started the diet. So what you need to do is calculate your new maintenance. And this will be useful if you download my nutrition calculator spreadsheet. It's linked down below. You can just go to the tab that says maintenance from a deficit. You would put in how much weight you lost and over how many days, and it will calculate your new maintenance for you. After you have your maintenance, you then need to calculate your new macros for the diet break. So for a diet break, we actually drop protein and fat a little bit. For protein, I would set your multiplier to 0.7 or 0.8 if you're not there already. So let's say you're at like 1 gram. I would drop it a little bit to, again, 0.7 or 0.8. And then for fats, you should probably do around 0.3 grams per pound of body weight. That's like the minimum amount of fat you need to stay alive. So I'd say somewhere around there, maybe slightly higher. And then the rest of your calories need to come from an increase in carbohydrate to get to total maintenance calories. Again, you can get help calculating your macros from my nutrition spreadsheet. You just go to the macros tab, you put in the protein multiplier, and then you can pick your desired ratio of fat and carbs, and it will do all of this for you. So do not worry. Again, that is linked down below. Go ahead and download that. So once you've set up your new maintenance and your new macros for the diet break week, you would just simply eat at that level of calories and macros for the week. see what happens at the end of that week. A lot of times you will actually end up losing, which is kind of surprising. It won't happen all the time, but if you do end up losing on the first week of a diet break, feel free to take a second week and just see if you maintain at that level. But either way, whenever your diet break is over, you would then just go back to your calories and macros from the last week of a deficit. When to diet break? This one is a little bit trickier to give an answer because it really depends on a lot of factors, like how long you've been dieting, how big has your calorie deficit been, how lean are you, how are you feeling, some subjective measures. So I can't really just give a strict guideline, but I can sort of give you guys some tips on how you might implement it yourself. So if we look at the MATADOR study, they did it pre-planned. They said, I'm gonna diet for X amount of weeks, and every 2 weeks I'm gonna alternate between a deficit and maintenance. So you can do that. Personally, I don't like that. I like to use a diet break when I'm feeling like I need a diet break, because if you do it in the MATADOR study or you follow that type of method, that's gonna double the length of your diet, which is a long time to diet compared to if you were to just do a deficit. So personally, I try to get the most out of my deficit weeks, and then if I'm feeling like I need a diet break, I will take one, because as a graduate student, there are definitely weeks when things get busy. So if I had a lot of teaching obligations, or if I had a group meeting presentation, which, those are a lot to put together without a calorie deficit. So if I am in a calorie deficit and I'm kind of not feeling mentally there, I'd be like, okay, this is probably a good week to implement a diet break. I know I could benefit from some extra calories. And then the following week, I would just go back to eating at my deficit calories. I went back and checked my contest prep from 2019, and my total diet was 40 weeks. And I think I ended up taking 11 diet break weeks. So about 25% of my total diet was spent in a diet break. There were a couple periods, I think actually 2 times, where I took 3 weeks in a row of diet breaks. So 3 weeks at maintenance, then I'd go back to fat loss, and then 3 weeks. I don't remember what the reason was, but that's only 6 weeks. So out of the other 11, that leaves us 5. So there were 5 times when I would just do a single week of a diet break. So again, there really is no right or wrong answer. I got to where I needed to be to get on stage. I'm not saying that everyone needs to take a 3-week diet break. I'm not saying anyone needs to take them at all. It's all personal preference. Some general guidelines, I guess, would be, let's say 2 to 4 weeks in a deficit, and then 1 to 2 weeks in a diet break. So again, those are not set in stone, but those are kind of like a general pattern to follow. Layne Norton, in his book Fat Loss Forever, linked down below, he recommends 2 weeks on and then 1 week off, which I think I did in a different diet, and I sort of enjoyed that. So that's a pattern that you could follow. The one thing that I wouldn't do is have your diet break period be longer than your deficit. So I wouldn't diet for 1 week and then take a 2-week diet break, because that is just going to extend your diet for way too long, and trust me, you don't want to do that. Keep in mind that adherence is the most important factor for fat loss. So if you are on a diet that you feel the need to go and have a cheat meal, then that diet is not for you. It is too restrictive, so please reconsider your diet. A diet break is a tool to help already sustainable diets ensure that we are progressing while we are in a calorie deficit. That's all it is. A diet break and a refeed is an extra tool in our toolbox to help us have a successful diet. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. I should see them, and I'll be able to get back to you guys and help you with your situation. Or if you want to contact me on Instagram, it's at Tyler_thefitchemist. Feel free to slide into my DMs, and I should see that as well. But yeah, I look forward to you guys using these refeeds and diet breaks. They really are a great tool. I've personally enjoyed using them. My last contest prep was way more enjoyable when I incorporated some of those diet breaks rather than just dieting for like 20 weeks straight. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments down below. And again, if you are someone who's looking to take control of every aspect of their life, and we're going to start that with our fitness and nutrition habits, then please do subscribe, turn the notifications on so you don't miss when I post a new video. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.